Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Empire Sports Talk. I am your host, Roman Gennaro. Let's get right to it. Big news out of Major League Baseball this week as 4 players were announced as part of the 2018 Hall of Fame class. Chipper Jones, Vladimir Guerrero, Trevor Hoffman, and Jim Thome all had their names read and were voted in as part of the next class of the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. Congratulations to these 4 guys, and Vladimir Guerrero will go into the Hall of Fame wearing an Angels cap on his plaque, making him the first player for the Angels organization to go into the Hall of Fame wearing their cap in the plaque. So congratulations to those 4, and this is a pretty big, exciting thing for me as a fan, because I grew up loving these 4 players. Each and every one of them. I had a special connection to Chipper Jones because I grew up a Braves fan, and I got to go to Turner Field during his last stretch of home games before he retired. So this is a very exciting day for me, not just for Chipper, but for Jim Thome, Trevor Hoffman, and Vladimir Guerrero, who, as I said, I greatly enjoyed watching them in their careers as well. So congratulations to those 4. It's something truly special to be voted into something like that, so that it's validation on your career as a player, if you need it, that you did well, and not only did you do well, but that you were one of the best, because the Hall of Fame is reserved, or at least should be, for the best players in the game, whatever game it may be, whatever game that we're talking about. So congratulations to those 4. Edgar Martinez, the famous designated hitter for the Seattle Mariners, fell about 20 votes shy this year. You have to get 75% of the vote by the Baseball Writers Association, and he got 70, which is only about a difference of 20 some odd votes. So it is likely that he will get in the near future. But for this year, for 2018, it's those 4: Vladimir Guerrero, Chipper Jones, Jim Thome, and Trevor Hoffman that will be getting in. Congratulations to those guys. What was surprising to me, and we'll touch more on this later, is that, as I said, you need 75% of the vote. Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds both received somewhere in the range of 57%, which is the highest that they have both received since their time on the ballot. So they are slowly climbing towards that 75% mark, which is sort of a shame, and like I said, we'll touch more on this later, because both of those guys were suspected and all but confirmed steroid users. So we'll touch more on that in a minute. But congratulations to the 4 guys that did make it in as part of the 2018 class. You earned it. All right, next, the big news in the NBA this week, besides the All-Star rosters being announced, those were announced this week. But the biggest news: LeBron James hit 30,000 points in the first quarter against Toronto, and he became the youngest player ever to reach 30,000, only the 8th player to do so in the history of the NBA. So congratulations to LeBron. It's a milestone week in sports for Hall of Famers and future Hall of Famers, such as LeBron. And again, he did something a little odd that we'll touch on later, but he became the youngest player to reach 30,000. And given that this is his 15th year, and he's only probably, 32? I could see him playing 5-6 more years, which at the rate that he's been going with the points, that could mean he could become the first member of the 40,000 point club. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Injuries can happen, other things can happen. But right now, the highest amount is 38,000 by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who sits as the all-time leading scorer in the NBA. So we'll have to watch LeBron over the next few years to see if he approaches that number, and if he becomes the first member of the 30,000 point club. So congratulations to LeBron on that milestone in his career, being the youngest player to do that. And here we are. Last week was the AFC and NFC championship games, and so we are now almost a little more than a week away from Super Bowl 52 between the New England Patriots and the somewhat surprising Philadelphia Eagles. They're not surprising because early in the year and throughout the season, we kind of expected the Eagles to be there, but what we did not expect was for them to get there under the quarterbacking of Nick Foles. But Nick Foles has played very well in the playoffs, despite a rough Week 17. He played just well enough to get past the Atlanta Falcons, and now he played near flawless football to get past the Vikings in surprising fashion. 38-7 was the score, and now he will be leading the Eagles into the Super Bowl. So it is the Philadelphia Eagles versus the New England Patriots, a rematch of the 2005 Super Bowl, which was won by New England 24-21 or 27-24, 24-21. So we'll have to see if history repeats itself there or if the Eagles can claim a Super Bowl title for themselves. Now, there's what deserves to be talked about, though, is the run that was made by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Though they came up short against the Patriots, Blake Bortles, to get them there, played two of the best games, or at least in the AFC Championship game, played the best game that I'd ever seen him play. Anyone who listens to the show knows that I have plenty of criticism for Blake Bortles and the Jaguars, despite living in Jacksonville currently. I have plenty of criticism for them. And even, Jags fans in the area said the last two games were his best games, but, that he played really well, but I was not impressed with that first game against the Steelers. He did just enough. Most of that was Leonard Fournette and the defense. He did just enough in that game. But I will give him credit and say that his game against Tom Brady and the Patriots was the best game that he had played, and with a little better clock management, I think we'd be talking about the Jags in the Super Bowl instead of the Patriots, as shocking as that may sound. But, once again, it is Tom Brady and the Patriots. They become the first team in NFL history to reach 10 Super Bowls. So it's a milestone week all across the sports landscape. The thing I have to say about the Jags, though, one more time, is they had a really good season, but I think it can only be attributed, well, not only, they have a really good defense, one of the best in the league, if not the best. It can be majorly attributed to the number of injuries in the league, all the quarterbacks and star players that got hurt, two of which were Andrew Luck and Deshaun Watson, both of which played in Jacksonville's division, which opened up the race for Tennessee and Jacksonville to capitalize on, both of whom made the playoffs. But if we look at it this way and say that Andrew Luck was hurt, Deshaun Watson did not get installed as the quarterback until halfway through the year, and when he did, things looked good for Houston. But in the 4 games that Jacksonville played against the Colts and Texans combined, they went 4-0. Their record was 10-6, so those had a majorly had things to do with that. Those 4 wins, I can't speak. Those 4 wins were a major part of the Jags' success. So next year, if Andrew Luck and Deshaun Watson come back healthy, I can't imagine the Jags will sweep those teams again. So my prediction is that Jacksonville won't even make the playoffs next year, but they are trending in the right direction. So congratulations to them. But I said it on the air when the Cubs were playing for the World Series that, the entire country was rooting for them. It was hard not to because they were the Cubs, but it would have been good for baseball had the Cubs lost and the drought had continued one more year, because that was baseball's biggest story. And baseball doesn't have a lot of worldwide stories, but this was getting attention, and so for the good of the sport, maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing if it continued. It did not, and that's great. I have no problem with that. But in the case of the Jags and the NFL, along with the criticism that I give to Blake Bortles, Among the harshest is that on any other team besides maybe Cleveland, Blake Bortles would be the backup quarterback. So when the Final Four was the Vikings, Eagles, Jags, and Patriots, it was basically Tom Brady versus three backups is what I kept telling people. If you can judge and tell me if that's harsh, if it is, it is. But that's what I believed. I think Blake Bortles proved that he could sustain being a starter in this league with the one game that he played against the Patriots, but I had said that it was the Patriots, or that it was Tom Brady against three backup quarterbacks, and I stand by that. But the issue being, I thought it wouldn't have been a good situation if we woke up on Monday and it was like Colin Cowherd said, that it was Nick Foles against Blake Bortles. That would not have been good for the NFL, that has already lost 10% of its viewership this year and seems to be trending itself in the wrong direction. And so that's not something we can get excited about. Tom Brady is the star of this league. He's the face of this league. So in a calendar year that has been so strange for the NFL, it's a good thing that Tom Brady is in the Super Bowl. I am not a Patriots fan. I will probably not be rooting for the Patriots in the Super Bowl, but it is probably a good thing that Tom Brady is in the Super Bowl for the sake of the NFL that is struggling in its own right. More on that later. So, once again, it's been a weird year for the NFL, but it's been a banner week in sports with the Hall of Fame announced in the MLB. LeBron James hitting 30,000, youngest player to do that, and the year in the NFL, which is culminating with the Super Bowl next week. Here we are. This week is the Pro Bowl in Orlando. Again, more on that later. It's kind of hard to get excited about that these days. I think it's funny that it was in Hawaii, which was about the only thing that players could get excited about. They decided to move that to Orlando, Florida instead. It's like Hawaii, but worse, and mosquitoes. So it's been a good week for certain players in sports, and a milestone week as well. All right, it's time for this week's edition of Roman's Ridiculous 6, everybody's favorite segment. So let's jump right into that. Number one on Roman's Ridiculous 6. I just said that the NFL is trending downward, and this particular thing will not help. The NFL rejected a Super Bowl ad proposed by military veterans asking players to please stand for the anthem. These anthem protests have been the talk of the league for the last 2 years or so, and it doesn't look like they're going away anytime soon because the NFL, which claims to try to stay away from politics, has become the most political league in the sports landscape, because now here come these military veterans asking, can we please do this ad? And the NFL says no. The NFL takes a clear stance on their own politics, and a clear stance. I mean, we knew that Goodell was on the side of the players that decided to do this when he said that they were talking about legislation to force players to stand, and that discussion lasted all of 24 hours before they threw that out. So you knew that that's where Goodell was coming from. I did not know, however, that he had the audacity to take it this far and to outright reject a group of military veterans that were willing to pay Super Bowl commercial money, which we all know is ridiculous and gets more ridiculous every year. I think a couple of years ago it was $3 million for 30 seconds. I think it's gotten up closer to $5 now. So veterans were willing to pay that for just a 30-second ad asking everybody to stand for the anthem as a sign of respect for a country. The country that we live in, despite what you may think about what's going on in the world right now. The American flag is a unifying force in this country that we can all get behind and support, because that, after all, is our country. And the fact that we choose to keep living in it, in the land of the free, shows that we still support the flag. So, why shouldn't we support the guys that protect it? So the NFL, America's Football League, has decided to reject that and make it a clear political statement. And the veterans were asked to, because I think the ending of their commercial was #PleaseStand, and I think the NFL asked them if they would mind changing it a couple different ways. Please respect, please observe, or whatever. And that wasn't the veterans' message. The veterans' message was clear: please stand and respect this flag. And the NFL said, no, we can't run that for you. Sorry. And so here we are now in this situation where the NFL has lost its way and made a stand in a very clear way when they clearly said that they weren't going to do that. They said they weren't going to be political, but a few years ago during the Super Bowl, the NFL decided to air an immigration commercial proposed by Anheuser-Busch about the journey from immigration for them to America, which is fine. They were allowed to do that, but then to go and when the other side of the political aisle asks to do a commercial that maybe wouldn't be favored by everyone, the NFL just says no. Instead of giving them the same chance that was given. There's a bug on the wall behind me, isn't there? Pay no attention to the ant crawling on the wall. But they made a clear choice, a clear political choice here, and I don't think people are liking it. So the NFL continues to trend in the wrong direction. Number 2 on Roman's Ridiculous 6. LeBron James, as I said, crossed the 30,000 point threshold this week, the 7th player in NBA history to do that. But things got a little weird when he congratulated his younger self on the accomplishment. Not only that he did that, but that he did it the night before he hit the milestone. The night before he hit the 30,000 point milestone in Toronto, he sent out an Instagram post on his own Instagram with a picture of himself in high school. Says congratulations, young king, on the accomplishment you're about to achieve, so on and so forth. Talking in third person to himself, which was odd, which was very strange thing to do. And it seemed to me, this seems like an action that would be taken by a player who thought they were underrated or that no one was paying attention to them. But LeBron James is the most talked about, most focused on center of the NBA, almost the center of the sports world, and he does this weird call out to himself. LeBron was born on the front edge of the millennial scope, the millennial timeline. But this seems like the most millennial move that an athlete can make. Hey, congratulate me on the milestone that I haven't achieved yet. Congratulate me on something that hasn't been done yet. And then also it takes note to self to an entirely new level. It takes note to self, it's like good job, me. Like it's not even like, oh, I'm so excited. I can't believe that this is happening. I'm so blessed to be in this situation. If he had said that the night before, that would have been fine. But he congratulates himself in a very egotistical move, in a very odd one, because you're not really sure what his thought process was when he decided to do that. Like I said, it would have been different to be like, oh, I'm so thankful for this opportunity. I never dreamed that I would be in this situation. And thank you to everyone, the teams and the fans and the sport of basketball for being there for me. But that's not the road he chose. and it just makes things weird for everyone. That he would congratulate himself in third person on his accomplishment is just odd. Number 3 on Roman's Ridiculous 6, staying in Cleveland. Kyrie Irving, as we all know, was traded to the Boston Celtics during the offseason in a very public demand of a trade. And what we found out this week was that he threatened, if he wasn't traded, if he wasn't given what he asked for, which was a trade, he had threatened to sit out with an injury for the season if he wasn't traded. He threatened to get season-ending knee surgery if he was not traded. Now, as we realize by the fact that he was ready to go in the first game of the season, and he's been fine ever since, that he did not have a knee injury, and that he was threatening surgery on an injury that clearly may have not existed, to avoid playing this season for the Cavs. Now, this is about the most selfish thing that I've heard in a long time, because this is Kyrie Irving saying, first off, I care more about myself than I do about the sport that I claim to love more than anything. I care more about what I want than about the team that drafted me, raised me up, made me a star, won me a championship, got me to 3 straight finals. I care more about myself, and I care more about being the center of attention than I do about my friendships and loyalty and the game that I love. And I care more about money and stardom than any of that. I get it. It's easy to be overshadowed by LeBron. But when LeBron is helping you win and getting you to 3 straight finals, and I think LeBron has been to, 7 straight finals? I don't think any of his other teammates have a problem with that. Except you. I think you're the only one to say, hey, this success is good, but I don't like giving the credit to someone else. So you decide to take yourself out of that equation. And granted, your new team is doing quite well. But let's not forget that before LeBron James got there, and let's be honest, brought Kevin Love there, you were on the Cavs by yourself, and you were nowhere near the playoffs. So, at this time, the request seemed odd, and then you go to Boston, and you're doing very well. But it just seems very selfish to kind of throw away the success and throw away the loyalties and the friendships and the chances, the automatic chances at championships because you just want to be the guy. And then to say, well, if you don't give me my way, then you don't get me. Which we talked a lot about throwing tantrums and selfish decisions last week with the UCF Knights and Russell Westbrook not campaigning for Paul George, which, by the way, has apparently worked because Paul George has said he's inclined to sign back with Oklahoma City, but that's a different thing. To say that you care more about yourself than anything else, by threatening to sit out after getting a surgery you don't apparently need, is just about the most selfish thing that I've heard. Number 4 on Roman's Ridiculous 6, as we touched on at the opening, the Hall of Fame was voted on by the Baseball Writers Association, as it is every year, and you have to get 75% of the vote to make it into the Hall of Fame for that particular year. For the past few years that they've been on the ballot, Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds have come in fairly low on the totem pole because of their suspected use, all but confirmed use, of performance-enhancing drugs in their careers. But this year they both got the highest total that they've gotten, which is around the 56-57% margin, respectively. Which, as we know from Edgar Martinez missing by 5%, which was about 18 votes, that means that, which was about 20 votes, that means that Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds, who only missed by about 17%, 16%, somewhere around there, are edging closer to getting in. And I know that, Roger Clemens is a 300-game winner, Barry Bonds is the home run king. But if you're all but confirmed, because those guys are never going to admit that they did it, but if you're all but confirmed on doing something like that, you shouldn't get in. It shouldn't even be a conversation. I mean, look at the percentages that Sammy Sosa and Manny Ramirez got. Well, I'll give you somewhere in the single digits is the percentage that they got. And I think it's silly because the difference between, say, Barry Bonds getting in and Pete Rose getting in, it's an entirely different conversation. I think that the all-time hits leader should be represented in the Hall of Fame. I do not agree with Pete Rose betting on baseball. And there's a reason that I put home run king in quotations, because the use of steroids directly influences on-field performance and your own stats. There's a reason they call it juicing, because you juice your own stats, and that's what Barry Bonds seemingly did. Pete Rose may have bet on baseball, may have bet on games he played in, but that did not directly influence his on-field performance. Just because there's money on the game does not mean, that he's going to go out there and that fact alone is going to get him 2 more hits than it would have before that. Because I can't imagine that he would ever bet against his team and then throw his own performance. We don't know that for sure, but those two are two very different things. One directly influences your stats, and one doesn't. And one has been seen as cheating the game, and the other one is just against the rules. But one is like, don't do this. It's an unfair advantage, which is what Barry Bonds supposedly did. And there's biological evidence that suggests he did, because when he started in the league, he was fairly thin and small and didn't really hit that many home runs. And then as you go through the years, you see him get bigger and bigger and bigger. But then there was one particular offseason, I think right around the 73 home run year, which was about 2000 or 2002, or 2001, excuse me, where in the off season and body masses fluctuate from off season to season, because you go from in shape to out of shape back to in shape, so the numbers are going to change. But in one off season he gained about 30-40 pounds, and it was a noticeable difference. He went from a thin kid to suddenly one of the bigger guys in the league, and that's not natural aging. And then his numbers: 70 home runs, 50 home runs, 40 home runs, 40 home runs, 40 home runs. And Roger Clemens, won 300 games. Pitching and hitting are also two different things, but, you shouldn't use steroids either way, because those are performance enhancers. Betting on baseball is not a performance enhancer. Those are two very different things. So I think the all-time hits leader should be, at least have a chance to get voted in, but performance-enhancing users should not. Those are two very different things. And so I think that the fact that Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens are both edging closer to the 75% mark is a shame. I don't think that Barry Bonds' numbers should be counted as the all-time hits leader. I think that should still belong to Hank Aaron, but that's personally my opinion. Let us know what you think about that. Number 5 on Roman's Ridiculous 6, Vince McMahon announced just a couple of days ago that his professional football league, the XFL, is returning. And this is bad for the NFL because Vince McMahon announced that this time around, the XFL will not be about gimmicks, which is what it was advertised as the last time, which is one of the reasons it did not last, such as letting players put nicknames on the back of jerseys. He says this time it's going to be a legitimate football league and a legitimate alternative to the NFL. And I don't think this is good news for the NFL because I've already seen around social media where players have been like, I'm seriously, where people, regular people, are saying things along the lines of, I'm thinking about just picking an XFL team and being a loyal fan because they're just so tired of the hypocrisy and political landscape of the NFL. So there are a lot of people that are legitimately excited about the XFL because it provides an alternative to the National Football League. And we've already seen players like Johnny Manziel and other players who are trying to get a legitimate shot at playing professional football excited about the XFL. So I think this second coming of the XFL here in 2020 is going to be its first season back. Will be a lot better than the first time and doesn't necessarily mean good things for the NFL after it's already lost 10% of its viewership from last year to this year. I don't think that's a good sign, but we'll have to wait until 2020 to find out. Number 6 on Roman's Ridiculous 6, and no, there's no real point here, but it's just the NFL Pro Bowl. Like I said, it happens between this week, between the AFC Championships and the Conference Championships and the Super Bowl. So automatically, anybody that's on the Super Bowl teams who are in the Pro Bowl, which if you're in the Super Bowl and you succeeded all year, there's probably a few of them, they do not participate. So automatically, the players from the two best teams aren't there. And then nobody really watches it because it's not all that exciting. It doesn't really decide anything like it does in other sports. And it's at the end of the year. Fans already know there's going to be a gap between conference championships and the Super Bowl, so people kind of shut off for that 2-week period. Nobody watches it. Pretty much the only good thing about it was that it was in Hawaii. So the players got to go to a cool location, have some fun, do some stuff. And now it's in Orlando, Florida, which I have family in Orlando. It's not that exciting. Disney World is in a suburb that's an hour away. It's not even really in Orlando technically, and it just seems like the NFL is trying really hard to make their All-Star game essentially relevant, and it's bottoming out every single time. They moved it from Hawaii to Orlando. They tried to do a fantasy draft type thing instead of conferences. That didn't work, so now they're back to the original format. But I don't think there's anything that can save the NFL from itself at this point, and can save the Pro Bowl from being just another forgotten thing. That's all the time we have for Roman's Ridiculous 6. Leave us a comment on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube about what you think about our Ridiculous 6, suggestions for next week's Ridiculous 6, whatever you got. Alright, now we're going to close the show with another popular segment called Emperor of the Week. This is where we pick one player or entity in sports for the week and name it Emperor for the Week for whatever happened. And we had a lot of entries this week. We had a lot of candidates. We had DeMarcus Cousins of the Pelicans had a 40 point, 20 rebound, 10 assist game, which hadn't been done since Wilt Chamberlain. We had LeBron James hit the 30,000 point mark. We had the Eagles and Patriots for reaching the Super Bowl. But I decided to go with the same group that led off the show, the 2018 Hall of Fame inductees, Chipper Jones, Jim Thome, Trevor Hoffman, and Vladimir Guerrero, because of what that means for sports and for those particular players for the 10, 15, 20-year period that they may have played in any sport, in basketball, football, baseball, whatever. If you're elected to the Hall of Fame, that is the league saying thank you for your service. You have changed our organization. You have changed our business because of what you did on the field. That is what the Hall of Fame is about, or at least it should be, about innovators, about people that meant something to cities, to franchises, to the business as a whole of baseball. And these four men exemplified that. Chipper Jones may be the last player ever to play for one team for his entire career, just because of the way that baseball works these days. Jim Thome was just an exciting player. Vladimir Guerrero got people out of their seats. He would hit home runs off of the dirt. And then Trevor Hoffman was the all-time leader in saves until Mariano Rivera broke that. So this, for these four guys to really change the game the way they did, and now to see all four of them get the call on video, you go through social media, you can see their reactions. It was something truly special to see those reactions of those four men and to have their careers recognized this summer as part of the greatest group, to be part of the greatest group to ever play the sport. Something very special. Like I said, for me, those were four of my favorite players to watch. Chipper Jones was probably my favorite player other than Ken Griffey Jr. So to watch Ken Griffey Jr. go in a couple of years ago, and now Chipper Jones, who got the highest percentage of the vote among the group, he got 98.2%, I believe. Congratulations to those four guys for an accomplishment that we can only dream of. Regular jobs and organizations don't really have Hall of Fame, so we can only dream of what that's like to be thanked by an entire business in the most honorable, special way possible. Baseball immortality for those four guys: Vladimir Guerrero, Chipper Jones, Trevor Hoffman, and Jim Thome. Congratulations. You have earned it. That is all the time we have this week. Check us out on Twitter, Facebook, Spreaker.com, YouTube. Leave us comments, follow us, whatever you can do. Get involved with the show. We want to hear from you. That's all the time we have for Empire Sports Talk. I am your host, Roman Gennaro. See you next time.